We'll start with Mike and then go to Ryan.
Yeah, Tony, just with the experience of today, how different was this from what you went through 2 years ago, where you've got some nerves and not really sure what might happen, but today you're pretty confident what's going to shake out?
Yeah, the guys, we kind of told them you don't want to put your future in anyone else's hands, whether it be during a game or during a season or your career or just in general. And, sometimes it's out of your control, but if you don't do as well as you can do, you leave it up to a committee to do this or that, or, congrats to Alabama for getting in, but that's a stressful deal going down to Hoover and having to fight your butt off in order to keep your season alive. It's a great stage or a great opportunity to do that because of the RPI that's available in our league. But you'd much rather have it be set up the way today was, where guys are playing hacky sack before, 2 minutes before the thing starts. And, really after 30 minutes of the show, or whenever the guys knew who we would play in game one, they kind of were ready to move on, and we had a quick meeting.
You mentioned envisioning Camden as a fourth starter all year. Do you imagine that being the case this weekend? And if so, would he be available to pitch any on Friday night, or would that be too quick of a potential turnaround?
Yeah, no, I think for step one, I think Camden needs to be available right away. I mean, the most important game in everybody's season is the first one that's coming up this Friday. So for us, when we go into that game with Wright State, we'd like as many guys as available. You probably want to hold back your starter for game two so he can prepare properly. But we're in that time of year, so starters need to be ready to relieve, and relievers need to be ready to start.
All right, we'll go to John next, and then Troy.
Coach, certainly some familiarity with the field. One team you played last year, another team 2 years ago in tournament play, and a lot of momentum coming from the ACC. What do you think of the three teams that will be here?
It's the same as our theme all year long. I think we've got a competitive group, and they certainly seek out challenges more than they hide from them. And there's a great challenge in this deal. I think we have, we're just getting familiar with all this stuff, but 3 conference champs coming to our place, if I'm not mistaken. 3 programs that are well coached, that finish the season strong, that are very, very familiar with postseason play. I think a couple of the teams have been in super regionals as of late. So easy stuff for you guys to write about, and clearly a group that, each of us will have each other's attention. You can kind of only focus on the team that you're playing the first game, but you'd be remiss if you didn't look at all 4 as a group. I mean, heck, we pass each other on the field during the practice sessions, but certainly a highly competitive group. And, that's why we're in the league we are. That's why the kids that are here said yes to the opportunity to compete, in the SEC, is find out what you can do against a great challenge.
We'll go to Ben next.
I thought so, yeah. Tony, I got 2 questions for you specifically about those opponents. One, you've played Wright State last year. Obviously, Liberty was the team that put you in the losers bracket in 2019. I guess as a coach, how do you balance those emotions with a team that kind of seemingly finds motivation out of the smallest things?
Yeah, I think this time of year, if you're not motivated close to your highest extent, 5th gear, however you want to phrase it, you kind of need to check your pulse a little bit. These kids all grow up dreaming about this tournament and, the possibilities that can come from it. So I think if anything, it might be the opposite. You might need to temper some of those things. Maybe not exactly the opposite of what you're saying, but temper those things and just go out there and play ball. But with each new day, kind of like we just experienced in Hoover, whether it's the opponent, the time of day you play, the circumstances, the situations that pop up in the middle of the game, those can dictate, some things as well with your team. And I think it's important for our guys to manage those situations as they pop up. So, as it relates to the teams, having played them in recent times, there's some, we played Liberty on a Tuesday going into that regional in North Carolina. So there's a scouting report, there's an outcome, there's things that tie into it. But at the same time, we're a different team than, the Florida team that we just played. I mean, Leftwich is one of the best pitchers in the country right now. He was not that at our place. So just an example that pops into my head that, teams evolve as the year's going on, much less year to year. So while there's still some familiar faces in each of the lineups the last 2 years with those 3 teams, these teams are all the 2020 teams that have gotten to this point.
And then 2, how do you evaluate a team like Duke that seemingly lost every major series it played in conference play, but is now winners of 12 in a row and kind of comes into this regional red hot?
Yeah, dragging from that same theme, that you can be a different team as the season evolves, and a guy may figure a thing out or two. So you got to look at that. On the opposite end of that spectrum, the regular season is the regular season, and then you kind of almost begin a new section, or almost kind of a unique little season unto its own with your conference tournament. And both of those are now over with. So we'll leave those in the past and hang our hat on the accomplishments that have taken place during those. But we'll also kind of start anew and have a blank slate for this regional that we've kind of been envisioning or dreaming about on our home turf.
Yeah, Tony, I'm just curious, as you were driving back last night and maybe going through Chattanooga, once the emotions have kind of rubbed off or whatnot, and did you learn anything new about your team this week in Hoover? And what do you take from that going into this weekend? Just where are you at mentally in regards to kind of what you're thinking about your team heading into this weekend?
Yeah, I already told the team I didn't do so good in Chattanooga. And I didn't do so good until The Departed was over with last night. Watch that movie. You kind of look at, sorry to be, a little too philosophical, but life too, you get growth out of hard times. And yesterday was a difficult loss. That was a great environment. Obviously you always want to knock off the perceived, or what is reality right now. The number 1 team in the country didn't work out the way we wanted. You got to move on to the next thing as quick as possible, but you're only human if you're going to, experience those emotions that come with that a little bit. But with that disappointment in the last game and then the first game comes an awful lot of lessons. And I think what was impressive was how our guys handled the environment yesterday. I mean, we learned a slew of things in the tourney, and we covered those in our meeting today. And there's also some lessons learned, little mistakes that we pointed out that we need to avoid in the future. But the major thing that was, I think, neat for me was that Vol fan base was amazing. And I don't want to get into a tit for tat with Arkansas, but their fan base is always great there. Ours matched it, or it seemed to be kind of be 50-50 or whatever it might've been yesterday. And it made for an incredible stage. I mean, during that anthem yesterday, I felt like, Ray Lewis. Obviously I'm not, but I felt like a middle linebacker that could rip somebody's head off, as did our players and Arkansas's guys. And for our guys to handle all that and play well for most of that game, I think was a good point, because that stage is going to become familiar here, starting with Friday. Loud crowd, a lot to play for, and all that good stuff.
We'll go to Troy next, and then back to Mike.
Tony, how much fulfillment is there in you and these guys that you've kind of built this program up to the point where you can host a regional, you have the potential to host a super regional, and anything that comes after that?
It's great, but the pandemic has messed with my mind. And I think it's actually maybe helped our guys, or at least it's helped me. And I'm kind of I'll believe it when I see it mentality right now. So for now, this stuff is important. The show was fun for our guys to watch. We fed them, but we kind of had to get unpacked. For now, it was kind of get all the riffraff out of the way, for lack of a better phrase, today. And then, when Tuesday rolls around, getting back to practicing will be fun. It'll be on our field. We'll get back into our routine. And I think we'll prepare, hopefully with a little bit of edge to us, because we didn't finish on the note that we wanted to down in Hoover. So then we'll worry about the next day, and eventually, however many days there are between now and Friday, when there's a lot of orange in the stands and we have our national anthem here, that's when I'll be excited about the vision that we had for this regional.
Yeah, Tony, I have 2 questions for you as well. Just first off, do you have any early thoughts on how you might line up starting pitching for the regional?
Yeah, I mean, we've got we didn't want to mess with Chad or Blade in yesterday's game, and like I kind of mentioned post game, even kind of messed up the Hunley strategy a little bit. But the one thing we did come away out of Hoover with is you can't say that we overtaxed anybody. So we have everybody available. We will line guys up for this is where we think we'll use you. But I think before we commit to anything, we'd like to let everything settle down today, have conversations as a staff, also have conversations with our players, and then put a plan into play.
And then secondly, with being at home, what are the upsides for players with routines, and are there potential downsides just to being at home and maybe outside of the environment that you might normally have in the postseason?
Yeah, no, I think for our guys, there's a sense of familiarity and comfort. You get to sleep in your own bed. You always talk about control the things you can control. Well, you can control a lot more things when you're in your own environment. So I think we'll be able to do that. At the same time, we'll be restricted just like the other three teams. I've cautioned our guys, when you get to Hoover, it kind of gets down to, hey, you can do this, but you can't do this. Well, when you get to an NCAA regional, you can multiply that by about 3. You can stand here, but you can't stand here. During a rain delay, you have to stay right here. So again, important for our guys to manage. I think you're alluding to, there can be some distractions, with tickets and family, but managing those small peripheral things, but also what comes at our place with what we can and can't do. There'll be some routines we'll be able to keep, but that we won't be able to do. It really should not affect what goes on between the lines. It's kind of environment versus the game. Regardless of what goes on, the environment's going to be phenomenal, but the game is the game, and that's where our guys' heads need to be.
All right, guys, we got time for 2 more, Coach. We'll go to Ben and then finish with John.
Yeah, Tony, I was just curious about kind of the progression of the program. I know you're not big picture right now, but 2 years ago you did just talk about maybe being a little nervous during the selection show, and not a lot of nerves today. Just can you just speak to kind of how far the program has come and what it meant to you to be able to host a regional and potentially a super regional, and how big has that been for recruiting? I know you can't talk about individual prospects or whatnot, but just in general, how big has this been for recruiting?
It's been a boost, but I'll tell you, the number one, if you were to go trending topic, I've said this before, the number one thing that's going on right now is the kids that we're visiting with or that are committed to us are seeing the environment that we're playing in. And I think we're playing in that environment because guys like Q and Josh develop our players, and that's helping the environment get better. But also we're fortunate enough to be at a place like Tennessee where the environment's off the charts, whether it be yesterday or even more so the home games we've had, in recent weeks here. And they're seeing that. And that can really add to a kid's experience when he's in college ball. It can also prepare him for the dream of what is Major League Baseball, after this. So I think that's huge. And then you talk about progression. Self-belief was a big thing when we got here that kind of needed to be transitioned. And we now have a lot of guys that believe in themselves, and the proof's kind of in the pudding. I mean, gosh dang, Kevin Kopp's pretty difficult to hit, but our guys have at least stood in there well and done some damage against the guy. I've kind of listed off other things when I was at Hoover. The bottom line is the league prepares you. And if you can hold your own in our league, there's no reason you shouldn't believe in yourself or your team. And I think that's a spot we're in right now. So that certainly helps. Postseason's got a different viewpoint. I don't think our guys really knew what it was about a couple years ago. And now they're more familiar. And we talked about, hey, the regional over in Chapel Hill didn't go as well as we wanted to, but we were in the final, and it'd be a lot easier to play that final on our home turf. And here we are.
One of the things that really stood out watching the selection show is how different conferences had different plans. And there's one team that made the field that didn't even play 40 games. You guys have played 61 games, every game that you possibly could. And I'm just wondering, what do you think it means to your team that it's had the routine that it's had now for 15 weeks? And what does it mean that you've had the opportunity to get so much ball under your belt this season?
It's been huge, John. And it's one of the reasons we were in the position in the league when we finished, why we went into that tournament. We just finished, incredibly confident in the amount of repetitions we have. We were the only team there that played 56 games. And, it just kind of was a thing that added to the environment of the building. Our guys were bitter about last year, and that's well in the past, but we're anxious to get as many reps as we could and help prepare guys too. I mean, you saw Christian Scott and Kyle Booker perform the way they did in Hoover. I don't think they can do that unless we can mix in, certain repetitions, like we did. Same could be said for a guy like Mabry and maybe some others. So it certainly helps. But the one thing that sticks out is we got all that baseball in, but Chad Dallas had an off week. Blade Tidwell was gradually brought along as a freshman. Will Heflin was a guy who came in, in the first few weeks of the year and established himself as a starter. We've mixed up closers. So I don't think we've really leaned on anyone or worn anyone down, including our catchers. So I think the routine and the repetitions have been there. And I also think, we're about as fresh as you can be as an SEC ball club going into this weekend.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, guys.